making it through the second match would be enough for him. Honestly, I think this challenge he has, and I don't see it changing. He's got some years on him, and obviously from the injury, like it's just he doesn't have the physicality to last, especially 5 sets throughout an entire tournament.
Even when the big four were completely dominating, this was the Grand Slam where other players, if anyone was gonna break in and win a Grand Slam, it was this one. The likes of Del Potro, Cilic.
Yep.
Team during the pandemic or whatever.
We don't want to see her playing when she's not in a position to compete in the same way that she used to, because you won't see that same fire, that same spirit, the reasons that she became so beloved in tennis.
Yeah, welcome back to the Getting Grip podcast. It's the final Grand Slam of the year, the US Open, of course. I have to say, it might be an unpopular opinion, but it's my least favourite of the 4 Grand Slams. Mainly because I prefer, in terms of hard courts, I prefer quicker surfaces. And it was also the last Grand Slam where, often you have players that are out injured or whatever after a long season. So often you don't have the full array of players that you might like. But that's just my unpopular opinion to start. Anyway. We're going to take a look at the Brits to start off with, seeing as there are so many in the main draw these days. We've got We've got Norrie, we've got Murray, Edmund's back, Evans is in there. I don't know if I'm missing anyone else, but yeah, at least four players there. I mean, where else will we start other than with your man Muzzer against Carundolo in the first round? How do you see that one going? How do you see the tournament going for him? What would be a successful tournament for him? I know his ambitions is to win the tournament, but realistically,
what would be a successful tournament at the US Open for Murray? I think making it to the second week would be successful. No. Making it through the second match would be enough for him. Honestly, I think this challenge he has, and I don't see it changing. He's got some years on him, and obviously from the injury, it's just he doesn't have the physicality to last, especially 5 sets throughout an entire tournament. And you can't do it with 3 sets on the smaller ones. So, as much as I'd like to see him do well, I would be surprised to see him. I think he'll probably win the first match. I reckon he could probably beat Carundolo, but beyond that, I don't think he's going to go very much further.
Okay. I also forgot to mention there is another British player, Draper, as well, who's obviously the young gun coming up. He's against Ruusuvuori, who is, again, a bit of a tricky player. I saw him play him, I don't know if they played at Queen's, but I saw Ruusuvuori play at Queen's, and he's quite a handy player. But again, that's a winnable match for Draper. I don't know how do you see him going in this tournament. Obviously, it's early days in terms of Grand Slam experience and stuff. There's not much expectation on him.
No. I think he's got a lot of talent, and that's something that's quite a hard phrase to come by for a Brit, which is interesting. The way he strikes the ball, it sort of it sets my mind towards the likes of Musetti and Alcaraz and Shapovalov, and the way they hit the ball. There's a lot more intent behind it, the aggressive stepping through the court sort of style, rather than compared to the classic British style, which is grind them out. We have very much as a nation taught that into our tennis players over the last couple of decades, and it's not to say it hasn't worked, but it's nice to see that we have something a little different to offer.
Yeah, and if we then go on to those grindy players who have actually had a lot of success, the main guys flying the flag are Evans and Norrie at the moment, at least in terms of consistent runs in different tournaments. Who do you see making it the furthest out of them? I think you've mentioned Norrie was sort of like a dark horse for you. How do you see the tournament going for those two?
I wouldn't be surprised. This is going to be a controversial opinion, I'm sure of it. I wouldn't be surprised if Norrie got to the final. And I wouldn't be surprised if Norrie even won. Because what we saw, especially at Cincinnati, was Norrie not really playing that well. He was okay, and he was finding a way through matches and grinding out wins, but he got pretty far not playing his best tennis. So that says to me, at this tournament, everyone's a little bit more tired, as you said earlier. It's your least favorite Grand Slam. This is actually one of the reasons why it's my favorite Grand Slam, because you get a sense of the people who have looked after themselves better throughout the season. Those of them that have gotten to the end of the season and are in a bit better, physicality as well. But also, you get a little bit more of this upset. So, if there is a status quo throughout a season, it tends to change towards the end and towards this tournament, which is quite nice. Um, yeah, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if Norrie, if I'm sure he'll make it far, quarters or semis, but I wouldn't be surprised if he could actually win it.
Interesting you say that, because he might have an obstacle en route in the size of a Spaniard by the name of Rafael Nadal. Should he get to the quarterfinals, that is one of the projected quarterfinals. Of course, Nadal's been out for a little bit, as it seems, it's quite common these days. He'll have time off and then he'll come back and then he'll just kind of start smashing everyone again, basically. Although that didn't happen the other week, but again, I'm not sure that's not going to faze him that much. And it's best of 5, which brings him into it even more in terms of his mentality, that sort of thing. Is there any doubt in him getting to the second week and then semi-finals, final?
Doubt for sure. We come to expect the unexpected out of him in terms of what other humans are capable of doing. But Nadal's just a different breed, and I think it comes down to this idea again of like, is he going to pull off, the amazing and make it all the way to the final or whatever? I'll be honest, on the type of surface we're looking at and the way we hit the ball at the moment, and obviously the fact that he's been injured and people have got match experience, I would expect Norrie to beat him in the current state. But that again, it might seem controversial, but when you look at it, like, he hasn't been on great form since coming back. I mean, he's only played a match or two. Yeah, like I say, I'm welcome. I will welcome being surprised and Natal winning the US Open, but I don't see him making it into the second week. Honest opinion.
Interesting. Because it is a slower surface, which you would think would help him, but then again, I suppose if he's
less so these days.
Physically.
I was going to say less so these days because, again, his physicality is not what it once was. And I'm not saying, again, for his age, it's still impeccably good. But compared to some of these younger guys, especially the ones who've lasted through the season, a lot better.
Okay, interesting. In terms of other big hitters, we've got, in the projected quarters, we've got Hurkacz, Alcaraz, Ruud, Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Auger-Aliassime. Any of those stand out to you as guys who could and maybe should go all the way?
No, to be quite honest, like, it's quite an open draw, and we should be talking about Medvedev winning because he is the number one seed. We should be talking about that, but unfortunately, there's something at the moment in world tennis that I don't see it being that cut and dry. So, with the absence of Djokovic, yes, Nadal's about, but not on the form that we, like to see. And again, whether that matters or not, it remains the question and always will. But yeah, I don't think it's as cut and dry as like, who do you think will probably get there? It could literally be anyone's match. I think provided pretty much any of the players that have entered, if they turn up on their best day, they're going to win said match.
Yeah, I think it is probably the most open of any of them this year. I mean, I suppose you could have said that about the Aussie Open maybe at the start of the year because there's always a bit of uncertainty about that. But I think this is if you look over the years, this is, even when the Big Four were completely dominating, this was the Grand Slam where other players, if anyone was going to, break in and win a Grand Slam, it was this one. Like, the likes of Del Potro, Cilic, team during like the pandemic or whatever. So when
Murray won it the first time in 2012, I mean,
it does tend to be more of an unpredictable one. So again, with the way tennis is at the moment, with the Big Four broken up and injuries and all that sort of stuff, it is like you said, probably the most open, maybe the most open any Grand Slam's been for quite a while actually.
What was it? I read a statistic recently that said, I think it was, this is the first tournament where none of the Big Four are seeded number one. First Grand Slam even. first Grand Slam. So
Yep.
yeah, that's frightening.
Yeah,
Because if that
it's
doesn't mark an end, I don't know what does.
uncharted waters, I suppose. But yeah,
Mm.
like you said, I think Medvedev would be the person I would back, but I'm not confident in it. Not confident like I would have been like at last year's US Open. He does have a good record at the US Open generally. I want to see Alcaraz kind of spark into life again. I know he's gotten to, he still gets to like the latter stages of a lot of tournaments, but I'm just sort of waiting for
You're waiting
that
for the
big
unstoppable
breakthrough.
phase.
Yeah, where he just destroys players. But yeah, like if I was going to pick anyone, I would probably still side with Medvedev, but yeah, not confident in that at all. Is who's your actual pick for the winner then?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. This is it, and I genuinely think that the most important quarters that we're looking at is the Norrie Nadal one. And I've said Norrie's the dark horse, but to be quite honest, I don't really think it's that much of a dark horse sentiment that we're looking at. Um, but at the same time, if Rafael Nadal brings out, this the person he can be, then he'll go on and win it. So I think that match will determine the winner. If I'm quite honest with you. But
Okay.
again, that's saying that none of those other players are going to play their best tennis. Hurkacz has had some good form. Medvedev, he is number one. Like you can't take that away from him, regardless of recent form. Um, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that even Tsitsipas, like he has made big runs before in Grand Slams, and sometimes he
Yeah,
just sparks into life. You just don't know.
he seems to fizzle out in big moments and big matches, and has to resort to famously controversial tactics in order to bring himself back. So we'll see.
Well, he's allowed to have coaching on court now. That's another thing that's a bit
Oh
different
yeah,
as
I'm pretty
well.
sure he's glad about that.
I think it was probably him leading the campaign for that. No one could be bothered to put up with it, so it's like, yeah, you know what, just carry on. You can have it.
Makes you wonder what he thinks about when he's playing a match if he's not talking about like tactics and the match itself.
You just don't like him.
I tell you what, he's not won any fans over the last couple of years. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it is a little bit odd, this demeanour on court. But anyway, one other player that we haven't mentioned is, of course, Nick Kyrgios. He's up
Indeed.
against his good doubles mate, Kokkinakis, in the first round. You'd expect him to win that. Is he a potential dark horse?
Yeah, this is funny actually. Like, I probably need to change my mind. I probably need to say that Norrie's my bet, and it's still a little out there. Don't get me wrong, but I would say that Kyrgios is probably the dark horse to try and win it as well. Because again, if he enters that sort of form that he took at Wimbledon and plays it, the tennis we know he can play, like he is the most talented player on the ATP tour without a doubt. Then yeah, he could absolutely do it.
Yeah, and he's shown some good form already in some of the
Yeah.
hard court events in the lead up. So
Washington, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that serve. Yeah, as long as he gets into a nice rhythm on that serve, he get a lot of free points and put pressure back on the opponent. So yeah, but like I think everyone's willing him to do well as well, and he's the kind of guy that he'll bounce well off of like a US crowd because he's into all that kind of stuff anyway. So
Yeah, exactly.
be good to see that. To the women's side of things, where else will we start than with the current champion and Brit, Emma Raducanu? Loads of talk about her, as is to be expected. It's been, I don't know how you would describe the year. It's kind of a learning curve, I suppose. Ups and downs, as you would get with a younger player anyway. And it was like, obviously it was a massive surprise like last year when she went all the way from qualifying through to winning it. And yeah, it's probably always going to be a bit like this, a bit up and down, and maybe for another few years anyway.
Yeah.
She has actually got quite a tough match in the first round. She's up against a veteran in Alice Cornet, who actually did pretty well at Wimbledon. So how do we see that match going? It's potential banana skin straight away there. Although Emma has been playing quite well actually in the lead up to this.
I was going to say I'd expect her to come through it with her current form, especially how she was at Cincinnati, beating two former champions in sort of Azarenka and Williams. Uh, Again, they're not an amazing form at the moment, but it's still one of those things where I would expect She's got enough of the weapons, and now a lot more maturity and when I talk about maturity, I don't mean anything to do with her age, just simply the maturity you need to have on court. As you say, she's had a year's worth of match experience, ups and downs. Um, I think she's starting to finally find that level where she wants to be competing at the way she wants to compete as well. So, yeah, she could make a deep run, and I would expect her to, simply because she won it last year. But you can't say that it's not going to happen because a lot of the factors that helped her get there last year with the way she played, they're still there this year. And one of those is the way the balls bounce, especially in the US Open court. So you've got a slower court and you've got softer balls. Well, that's exactly what you want for Raducanu's style.
Mm. Yeah, hopefully she can get through that first round match. But then even if you zoom out on that half of the draw, it's a pretty stacked half of the draw. We've got Iga in there, Sabalenka's in there, Azarenka even, she's in there, Kvitova, although not like amazing history at the US Open. Anyone else in that half of the draw that you see? I mean, that's the obvious one, isn't there? In terms of going far in the tournament and potential maybe match up with Raducanu later down the line. Anyone that's
the obvious one? Who do you mean?
Iga, obviously.
Yeah, again, like her form's not been perfect lately. But again, like she turns up, she's got some serious weapons. There's a reason she's number one, and there's a reason that she ended up, having the longest, match winning streak for the women's tour now since the Open era started. So, yeah, I'd expect her to do fairly well. She's number one seed, so you kind of have to. No, I think in that side of the draw, as you say, the big names have been mentioned. There aren't a huge amount of other players where I would be looking at them and saying, "Oh, they're a threat." But again, this is the US Open and it's the end of the season. The physicality starts to drop. What happened last year? You have to expect some of that. Maybe not a qualifier winning the whole tournament again, but you have to expect some upsets along the way. So even these are, highly seeded players, big players, you might not see the form that you'd expect.
I think my pick might be, well, at least in that half of the draw, would be Jessica Pegula, because she's been in some pretty good form on the hard courts. Again, an American, hopefully, to be inspired by the crowds. But again, it is a tough half of the draw. You've also got Badosa in there as well. She's been doing decently well in the Grand Slams. And then, the experience of like Azarenka, Kvitova, etc. But yeah, I guess, as you say, this tournament seems to bring out quite a lot of upsets. So it's kind of, even with all those strong names, it could just be some other player that comes through that no one's really talked much about. But I would still side with Pegula or Swiatek at least to get to the semis in that half of the draw. If we then move over to the other half, we've got the farewell. At least we think it's the farewell for one of the GOATs in Serena Williams. She's up against Kovanic in her first match, which it could actually be quite a tricky match because she's done quite well earlier this year, at least at the French Open. So she has some experience in the Grand Slams. What are your feelings about this? It's going to be quite sad to see her go, especially in front of the US crowds. End of an era, I suppose, as well as on the men's side, Big Four being broken up. This is kind of the end of one of the GOATs of the game.
I think this is very much the changing of the guard, and we talked about this quite a bit over the last few months. I don't know because we've talked about it so much that I'm almost starting to feel a little numb towards it all. I mean, I'm glad all of these new players that are coming through and all of these new players that are well established. I think women's tennis is in very safe hands with Serena potentially leaving. Again, we can't say for sure because she herself has said, "Oh, you never actually really know when I'm going to leave. I'm just going to tell you after." I don't know. It's sad, don't get me wrong, but we don't want to see her playing when she's not in a position to compete in the same way that she used to, because you won't see that same fire, that same spirit, the reasons that she became so beloved in tennis.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, like you said, probably would have been more emotional if she'd have just sort of said before the tournament, "Oh, this is
Yeah,
it. This is my last tournament."
yeah,
It's kind of been like a build up or a long road to it
yeah,
actually
yeah.
happening. But yeah, it would be nice to see her win a few matches just as a good send off rather than just fizzle out in a first round match. If
She's
we
on
look,
home soil, so it's quite
yeah,
possible that she's going to have that crowd support.
yeah. Oh, it was really sad at Wimbledon when I thought she was going to win that first round match, and like it went on for
Yeah,
ages, and it was like maybe it also becomes tougher in those like clutch moments as well to kind of pull it out of the bag, maybe like she used to be able to, because I
yeah,
think the older you get, it almost becomes more difficult because you know that it could be the last time I'm here or whatever, and that just puts more pressure on it.
yeah, yeah.
If we look at other players, other big names in that half of the draw, we've got your favourite, at least I think it's your favourite, in Simona Halep. How do you see her going in this tournament?
Yeah, again, it's tough to be able to tell. Similar to like with the men's draw, and whether the physicality is dipping off, and like the form that some of these players have been in. Like someone has not been in perfect form lately, but not terrible either. Um, Again, it's anyone's game. I will hope that she does well. I would expect her to make it to the second week. That not only is that opinion, but that's also the seeding. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing her play at the very least.
Yeah, well, she's got a qualifier in the first match, so hope
Mm,
she should win that. Really, I think other names that should or could and should potentially go far are Coco Gauff for sure,
yep.
and well, Onjibur possibly, and then also I think we got Maria Sakkari in there as well. Do you see any of those? Oh, and Leylah Fernandez actually, last year's finalist. Do you see any
Yeah.
of those potentially going all the way?
Coco and Layla. I would again. They're very very young. It's the same
Mm.
scenario as Raducanu, I'd say. But Coco Golf, I think that she's drawing quite a lot of crowd support. If anyone's in, if anyone's in line to take the throne of Serena Williams, then I would say that in terms of American superstars that are upcoming, I would say Coco's probably going to take that. Um, and yeah, with Fernandez, like the Canadian, it's still kind of like home soil in many ways. She's going to have a lot of supporters at the US Open, I would expect. So. Um, yeah, I think they could both do quite well, and especially now that they're both established as being um, players that can make it quite far and quite deep into a tournament.
Yeah, it's crazy with Coco. Like, it feels like she's been around for blooming ages, but she's still only 18, I think, which is
That's
just
because she
wild.
started at Wimbledon when she first broke in at 15 years
Yeah,
old. So yeah,
crazy. Um, yeah, if I have to push you for a prediction for the overall tournament, again, like we said with the men's side, it's pretty kind of open and quite
yeah.
unpredictable. If you've got to go for one player as your favourite and one as your kind of dark horse, so to speak, who are you going to go with?
Ooh, tough one. I'm going to say Swiatek for the winner. I mean, the seeding suggests it, but I also think that she might be able to find some form, string it together, and take advantage of people's, sort of lacking physicality. And if I was going for a dark horse, funny enough, if I was going for a dark horse, it's a toss-up between one of the real veterans or one of the real youngsters, and that would be either Coco or Serena as my sort of dark horses because it's crowd support, and I think the U.S. Open, you do get that noise, you do get that that feeling. Flushing Meadows, there's nothing like it when the roof's closed. I don't think. Um, I think that'll play a big part. So I'm really hoping that they do make it far because it's nice to see it.
Yeah, it's a real cauldron on Arthur Ashe when that roof's
Hmm.
over. It's so kind of like steep around
Yeah.
the outsides. Yeah, it's quite unique. Yeah, I can't really look past Swiatek as a favourite, to be honest,
No.
just because she's shown that consistency in the past. And I think having not done that well at Wimbledon, I think that'll drive her on a little bit more to to just basically want to crush everyone, get back to bageling people like she was doing before.
Oh, she will. She will.
And then in terms of dark horse,
Mm.
I think I think Leylah Fernandez again. Actually, I'm,
Yeah,
I'm tempted
that's
to
a
go
good
for
shout.
her. I mean, you could. I suppose I don't know whether you would class Raducanu as a dark horse, but I don't. I don't see her getting to the final. I don't think. Like she might get to the second week, but yeah,
defending champion. You can't take away from her that she is the defending champion. But yeah, I agree. I'd be surprised if she made it to the second week. I'd be happy, but I'd be surprised.
Yeah, second week would be a good achievement.